The red thread suddenly appeared one day. I was on my way out after being diagnosed with a severe eye disease that I had suffered for a week. Now you can live a normal life. At the doctor's words, I excitedly exited the eye clinic. I had several library books on my side. When doctors told me to stay away from electronic devices to avoid eye strain, I was stuck in the house and read only paper books that my sister lent me. I was looking down at the novels I had read, and I suddenly saw something long on my wrist. A red thread that is bright and red, but emits a dull glow, not as polished as wool. Did I read the book too impressively? For the time being, I rubbed my eyes, forgetting what the doctor told me to watch out for my eyes. But the bright red thread on my wrist remained. What is this? While walking, I reached out into the air without even knowing. Tusk, it's useless. It passes through like a laser light from a beam projector, so it cannot be caught. The red thread ran across the pedestrian crossing, through the alleys, and to the boulevard. If it had been cut off in the air, I would not have followed so hard. And as soon as I turned the corner of an alley, I fell under the manhole cover without seeing the sign that it was under construction. When I woke up, I had been rescued by a Cherkopia priest with a minor injury in which only my leg was broken. And the moment I saw the red thread running all over his body, I realized. A world where red threads are all over, regardless of age or sex, and beasts. I fell into the book I was reading. Red thread. In this harem novel, also known as the Flag of Death, only the female lead, Saintess Lucia, can see this red thread. A huge half-horse monster strode into the temple. I can see a fairly thick red thread embedded in the heart. In addition, the entire left arm is embedded like a hedgehog. It couldn't be this far as bruises or abrasions, so it was obvious that they were poisoned or cursed. I was hit by a poison frog monster. If I leave it, I have to cut off my left arm. Lie down here. The patient, who sat down with all four legs neatly gathered, gave up his rotting black arm, as if he had given up. Take a deep breath. I raised his hand and swept the red thread stuck in it. As soon as the tightly embedded threads touch my hand, they fall off like noodles and disappear. Of course, it will only look like that to my own eyes, and to the centaur's eyes, the rotting arms will appear to be regenerating. The treatment is over. Oh my god. The rumor was true. Human priest. Thank you very much. As I looked at the centaur, who were bowing its heads over and over again with great joy, I wiped off the sweat with pride. It has been 5 years since I fell here. As you can see, I was adjusting very well. As I sighed in half of pride and half of dismay, the Cherkopia priest, who was cleaning up medical equipment behind me, asked anxiously, "What's going on, lion?" The countless eyes on the forehead blink anxiously. The Cherkopia priest is a spider monster. When I first realized I had fallen here, it was one of the things that surprised me. Humans live separately in what is called the middle world of the lower world. Because of this, when the female lead, Saintess Lucia, first fell here, there was a scene where she was almost eaten as a human and then rescued by the male lead, a sand. Of course, I didn't have anything like that. When I arrived at the temple, led by the Cherkopia priest, he said, "It's a human woman." He said that and I almost got cut into pieces. Fortunately, I quickly grasped the situation. I can heal the priest. After removing the red thread attached to the dying Cherkopia priest, I gained confidence and saved his life, and became the first human healing priest here. Of course, I didn't say that I could see the red thread, but I only know that contact will heal the wound. Again, the red thread here is the death flag. At least one red thread is embedded in the heart of all living things. The thread of fate derived from the sun of life solar in the center of the world. The more this red thread is tied, the heavier the body, the pain, and the more it penetrates like a root, damaging the body's functions. In the original, the female lead, Saintess Lucia, could also remove this red thread or see it. Just like me. So at first, am I not the female lead? I thought about it again. But when I heard that a sand had not yet woken up from the seal, I realized that it was 6 years earlier than the original. And I was very devastated. Anyway, rumors about my tremendous ability spread steadily throughout the continent for 5 years, and the Temple of Lemda, which was only one of the numerous monster temples, was able to enjoy a golden age with a myriad of believers as it is now. It's pretty good, but it's also this red thread that bothers me. When I first fell here, the red thread that led me to the manhole cover disappeared as soon as I woke up. And for the next 5 years, the red thread did not connect to my body even once. Until today comes. Today was just the 5th year since I fell here. The day that means more than my birthday. The very day my life twisted was today. It's the evening when the sun is setting. I was on my way back after celebrating my anniversary that I had not told anyone about. I found a man dying wrapped in red thread at the entrance of the village. His 2 arms, 2 legs, and 2 eyes looked at me, so he must be the rare humanoid monster. He is alive from the sound of his whistling flute-like breath, but he is a man who will just die if left alone. How can there be so many red threads? I leaned over the fluttering priest's uniform, carefully smoothing the red thread in his pale chest. The threads gradually thin as if ice cream melts as I touch. At the same time, my chest hurts and throbs. There are no external wounds, but the pain of absorbing red threads is something I cannot adapt to even after 5 years. It is said that after 3 years of serving as a healing priest, you will feel a sense of responsibility that did not exist in me. The red thread stuck in the man's heart wriggled like a living snake and was entangled to my wrist. I quickly brushed off my wrists, but the red thread, which had been knotted, was tightly tied. This is the first time that a red thread that has not responded for 5 years has appeared on my body. And that too, I'm tied up with a man I've never seen before. I blinked my eyes in absurdity, and soon I decided to think quietly. Sometimes, when I was too tired, my absorption power would decrease. I was tired today, so I wondered if I could not use my ability properly. It will fall tomorrow. A drooping red thread followed rippling behind the humming steps, but moved without a doubt, without knowing that a ferocious bright red gaze was coming through behind me. The next day, I was almost late to the temple. I rushed to the temple in a hurry and managed to avoid being late. I gasped for breath and changed into a priest's uniform. My physique was smaller than other monster priests, so my priest's uniform was custom made. I tilted my head toward the backyard, and I wanted to turn around and run away. The man, leaning under the 3,000-year-old Daphne tree, seemed to have taken off a picture. A silver-haired man standing with his mouth open and stroking the sleeping Daphne tree. Greek and Roman mythology characters' clothing were fluttering around his body, but there was no problem in revealing his solid body clearly due to the bare chest or the half-illuminated cloth. He was an outstanding, handsome man in the world who could be brought to an art museum and installed as a statue. The man and I made eye contact. His bright red eyes glow slowly under the slightly curly hair. When I met those dangerous eyes, I stumbled back without knowing. Good to see you. I'm Abel. Abel, who looks fine, but who can change when he is mad. The third male interest of the female leafed and one of the worst villains after the Dark Lord. A handsome man who is dumb and took a blow to his heart and dies by a sand. I barely opened my mouth, denying the reality, trying to calm down my trembling voice like a vibrato. We've met, haven't we? Yes, yesterday. You saved me. He was beautiful like a statue. Oh my God. I barely swallowed a scream, feeling the urge to break my fingertips. No matter how bloody it is, why didn't you recognize that extraordinary face? And yesterday, I was clearly wandering around. No, how did I find him? Abel, who had been watching me shaking my pupils anxiously, suddenly approached. Then suddenly pulled out a dagger and poked it in his chest. A perfectly muscular chest was pierced in front of my eyes. I wasn't surprised because it wasn't that shocking for me to see so many things worse than that in a day, although blood spouted with the sound of the piercing. Until that lunatic pulls my hand and rubs it on his chest. The palm of the hand turned into a bloody color, and the thin red thread that was trying to stick to the chest fell off. Of course, in his eyes the wound will appear to heal. At the same time, I frowned at the throbbing of his chest. Abel, who took out his handkerchief from his pocket and wiped my hand, said, "You have to come with me." "I'm sorry, but I can't do that. I'm a priest here." I ran into the temple in fear of him catching up, but Abel was fortunately unwilling to follow. I gasped, shut the temple door, locked it up, and slumped on the floor. I then buried my face on my knees. It's a nightmare. It's a dream. Wake up. The reason I've been stuck in this village for a while is that I didn't want to meet the original characters, and I will try to go back after living a long life until the female lead finished everything. I cried out and clenched my hair. It was the moment when the perfect plan was in vain. Why is Abel here? In order to live, I must not get close to Abel. Never. It doesn't make sense to have my nose hooked on a guy that's about to get killed. Bad luck continued to bite my tail. No, it was too bad to say that it was bad luck, because today I almost died for the 17th time. The medical supplies that had been piled up nicely poured out to me. A hallucinated monster rushed to me and almost broke my head, and I was almost struck by a running cloud while I was going to buy medicinal herbs. What was even more upsetting was that Abel saved me every time. How on earth do you save me? Are you playing me? I felt a sense of crisis and made excuses quickly. Well, that's it. I actually have a life contract, so I can't leave the temple. Of course, it was a lie, but it is true that I cannot go outside the temple, because I was planning to live here until the original was finished. However, Abel's face brightened up. He pulls out a huge death sickle, death scythe. The priests tremble and lie on the floor. Hey, can I take this human? Yes, yes. I stared at the Cherkopia priest full of resentment, almost shedding bloody tears. But he looked at me crying with the eyes of a farmer who was hit with a natural disaster in front of a good harvest. Even though I had been here for 5 years, my things were simple. When I left the temple slowly, like a cow being dragged to the slaughterhouse, the priests who couldn't shed tears properly because of the Reaper's notice cried out and sent me off. Human, are you crawling? It's heavy, what should I do? As expected, you don't even care. Plus, you're a demigod and I'm a human. As I grumbled, he looked back at the increasingly growing distance, grabbed my luggage and held it on his shoulder. My favorability for Abel rose by 1. It is currently -545. At the end of an empty black field, I saw a staircase that seemed to rise out of the air. It did not look cloudy from above, but as I got closer, I saw signs standing on both sides. It is written in red letters, the place to death. The Temple of Abel, which is mentioned briefly in the original. It's gloomy. I didn't want to go up the stairs with dark clouds spreading out, but Abel climbed the stairs without hesitation. As I hesitantly followed, at the end, I saw a large courtyard that would only be seen in a large temple. I was scared to step on the black grass whether it was burned black or dead, and suddenly bones were looking at me. It was both horror and fear that the wide open eyes looked at me. What is that? Unknowingly, I became creeped and stuck close to Abel's back, walking slowly. Even Abel had an indescribable cold scent. But I was better than the rotten corpses. It's human. It's a human woman. As I quickly clung to Abel's movements with my mumbling, I could feel him looking back. Lord Abel, you're here. The majestic skeleton captain who is wearing armor found me while bowing his head to greet. And he drew his sword on a whim. Why is a human here? I brought her here, so leave it alone. As I followed the drooping red thread, I saw a room with an insignia that said I am a noble person. In the original, Abel is a reaper. He is demigod, or half immortal, so if one stabs his heart, he dies. Because of this, he made a fake heart and put it in, and the real heart was hidden separately. He doesn't die unless someone stabs him in that heart. However, since he is not a perfect existence, he feels pain and bleeds when injured, and he cannot regenerate until it is healed. However, there are no doctors in this world, only healers who use the power of light. Because he is a fallen being, I was the perfect Fusidin for Abel. Human, is it true that you can heal Sir Abel? Anyway, as soon as it was announced I was the dedicated first aid kit, whenever his fanatics and his subordinates met me and shouted at me. It seemed unbelievable that I could restore God when I was a human being who came up from the middle world. This is Karen. After confirming that our life depended on each other, Abel introduced me to his aide. As soon as I saw him, I grabbed my heart without knowing. Karen, he is a handsome man with an impressive atmosphere with slightly long black hair. Lucia's male interest number 2. As if announcing his unstable future, Karen's red thread that was connected to his heart was quite thick. Why do you look at me like that? Karen was the first to die among the male leads, even if he's not a villain. He was guilty of looking at the woman of his master, a sand, with such eyes, and was a submissive man who gave his life to protect the female lead in danger. This is the room where Lion will be staying. If you have any inconvenience, please feel free to let me know. How good looking is the black hair that has been slightly messy. He's hiding it now, but how cool would it be if he spread the white wings unique to a heavenly god? I was gazing at him unknowingly. I was called out in the middle of the night and went over to the next room, nervous. Abel, half naked, closed his eyes and sat down. His clearly exposed chest was severely wounded with scars. Even after that, Abel often came back late at night with scars of what he was doing, sometimes on days when he was really seriously injured. He even closed his eyes and gave up his body, but in the process, I secretly touched the red thread connected to his heart. Please cut off, disappear. I tried rubbing it hard with a wish, but unlike other red threads that melt away when touched, they don't. I tried many times, but every time it failed. I shook my head, remembering when I first met Abel. If I had known that he was Abel, then I wouldn't have healed and would have run away immediately. Sure, now, because of the red thread, I'm stuck. But if I said I was afraid, he would treat me more insignificantly. I hate that you are hurt. Even if you are a god, you feel pain. You get hurt. In other words, because you're a demigod, you can stand it even if you get hurt. But you're not the one who absorbs it. How do you always get hurt in the most painful part? Please take it easy. Abel looked at me with confused eyes as if he was thinking. Then, he let go of my arm, stumbled back as if he had seen something unfamiliar in his life, and then went outside. What's wrong with him? Abel couldn't be seen for days after that day. Yes, I was pissed at the topic of being the first aid kit. Instead, there were some good things. While Abel was away, I could ponder why the red thread didn't break. Of the many speculations, one was the most promising. Abel is a half-immortal, so his real heart is stored elsewhere. What's in his body now is a fake heart. Maybe that's why. If I touch the red thread that connects to the heart, it will come off, so I didn't know if it would be solved if I found the real heart. So I thought that when Abel returned, I would find the location of his heart at any cost. That night, Abel had come back late at night. He came to my room covered in blood. What the hell did you do now? I clicked my tongue and peeled off his armor. When the armor without the usual reflected light falls on the floor without a sound, a fluttering white garment is revealed. After seeing it, I peeled it off his chest, which I was used to, and I was about to reach for my hand, but he mumbled, "Sorry." His dry lips were covered with blood. A barely stretched finger grabbed my collar. "I'm sorry I got hurt." A familiar pain is felt and the red thread is absorbed. I couldn't heal them all at once, so I groaned and healed only the arms, legs, back, shoulders, and exposed areas were treated thoroughly. As I tried to stand up with a bloody towel, but his cold hand grabbed my wrist. Abel, half opening his bright red eyes, barely spit out a few words as he scratched his cold hands like a corpse. "Don't go. Please." "Okay, I won't go, so calm down. I'll be here." Even though he was a villain, I wasn't cruel enough to go away from those who begged so pitifully. Besides, he's a patient. I reached out my hesitant hand and began to gently sweep his back. I was thinking of staying by the bedside until he fell asleep because I told him I wasn't going to go. But this fool seemed to have a different idea. "Hey you," I screamed while being pulled to my bed, but I was blocked by the cold arms that encircled me. "Don't go, you're warm." I thought he was asleep and tried to get out of him, but his tight grip didn't show any signs of releasing. The next day, seeing us sleeping tightly, Karen was in horror to wake us up. "Abel can't remember yesterday. Why am I in bed with this woman?" After that day, Abel's attitude changed strangely. Anyway, I liked the fact that he was stuck in the office, refusing to soul hunt. He didn't get hurt, so I didn't have to act as his first aid kit, and I was happy he was relieved of suffering. But why on earth should I be here? I couldn't even figure out why I had to be locked up in this office. It may be unfair, but when I want to sleep, he doesn't let me go out. When I try to sleep, he buries his face in my hair with his arms wrapped around my waist. When until a few days ago, he said, "The smell of humans is annoying." And he sleeps comfortably, wondering if he is the same Reaper. When Abel, who was always in the temple, was stuck in the office, and he was crazy about the new human woman, it spread throughout the temple. Naturally, the eyes that looked at me changed strangely. The woman he sleeps with, mistress, human toy, a delicious woman that the Reaper will covet, and so on. I ignored the vulgar and colorful gazes and went my way. "Abel, there were a lot of goddesses who said they liked you earlier. If you're bored, why don't you go to them?" Abel, who was fiddling on my hair while I was reading a medical book with a deep expression, stiffened his hand. "Which woman?" His bright red eyes seemed to ask. "Just, there were a lot of them. Anyway, I need to study medicine." Of course, there is no such book in the Temple of Death, but I asked the skeletons who often wander outside to bring them. Of course, why would they? Why should I listen to humans? He said it's a lot of stuff, but he listened to me when I repaired his corroded and cracking joints. I used to secretly help the skeleton captain who had become close due to our transaction. Even today, I was called to the central temple because I was told to look after an injured person who was suddenly pushed in. But, all of a sudden, I'm glad I couldn't feel the pain because the neck was half amputated from the body. If it were a human, he would have died from shock. I healed the patient the moment it was in front of me. Cough, cough. I was so dizzy that I stumbled and sat down. And after coughing a few times, there is a hot feeling on my chest, and there is red blood on my palms. Me and the people around me were amazed. Why am I bleeding? The moment I raised the question, my eyes were spinning and I fainted. How many hours have passed, but she's not waking up. And when I came to my senses, a voice that was so low that it was creepy and chilling was reverberating in the room. It was a low and icy voice like monsters declaring death. "If you don't save her, I'll kill you." When I heard the doctor moving away, Abel opened his eyes and he grabbed my shoulder and shook it. I couldn't be shaken hard, but he held tight. "I thought you were dead. You weren't moving." I couldn't move because I was sick. After being diagnosed with overwork by the medical unit, who returned with a medicine, I was able to sleep well. As expected, Abel was clinging to my side, but he occasionally disappeared when I opened my eyes. According to later stories from the skeleton captain, he came to him and gave them all kinds of harsh corporal punishment in exchange for using his own first aid kit. He said with a depressed expression, "Abel sticks to me for 24 hours and cares for me. He feeds the medicine, checks the heat, and changes the towel. Even if the priests clamor, he shouted for them to get out. I pulled the blanket all the way to my neck and closed my eyes. After all, it's best to sleep soundly when you're sick. The overwork had washed away and healed. At the same time, I couldn't see where Abel had gone, so I wandered the temple freely and struck by Karen. The first time I've seen him in a while. He looked very emaciated. "Karen, are you hurt?" I looked at him with surprised eyes and he smiles, saying it's okay. It's okay. Even his ankles were wet with blood. As expected, the cut is clear as if a blade or something has brushed several times. I rolled up my sleeves, then swept the thick red thread as I touched it. But my head was not spinning like before. While talking, we climbed the stairs of the temple. Just in time, Karen said that he had something to report for Abel, and we were in the same direction as Abel's next room was my room. I haven't seen him in a while, but the conversation continued smoothly. My eyes were warmed by Karen, who gave a flower-like smile that made people happy. "What are you two doing together?" As soon as I turned the corner, it was Abel who appeared. The uniform is covered with dirt, screaming about what he has been doing. "Why aren't you wearing armor?" I tilted my head, but he pulled up the tail of his mouth and then pulled me with a straight face. And he lifted me up like a sack and began to walk to the other side. "I told you to use your powers only for me. How long have you been overworked? Do you want to die?" Abel, who put me down on the couch in the office, said expressionlessly. Instead of growling like before, Abel quietly opened his mouth. "One more time you stay with Karen, I'll kill." "Hey, really? He's also good at jokes. He can't even kill me anyway. Why are you saying such nasty things?" "Oh, I mean Karen." It was even more terrifying because it was a very sincere expression. The next day, when the news that a lot of injured people had arrived, I went to the central temple as usual and everyone was busy chasing me off, saying that everyone didn't need to be treated. What happened? When I asked Yuta, a senior official I had encountered several times, he laughed awkwardly and said it was Abel's command. "What kind of order is that?" I became embarrassed and went to find Abel. He wasn't in the room, so where did he go? While wandering, I heard from the monster maids that he was in a ruined temple behind. I gazed anxiously at the temple. The red thread is strung around like a spider web. The silver hair was shining hazy in the dark. Abel, as he was looking through something, he looked back at me with dread. What I can see behind him is a box. At first glance I could see something fluttering in it. Looking at the red thread that followed, the heart was clear. It must have been kept in the temple. Maybe because the real heart was in front of me, the red thread on my wrist had moved there. Suddenly a strong impulse came. If I touch that, does the connected thread break? But rather than that, I had to worry about Abel who was in front of me. Abel is enthusiastically obsessed with his self-confidence as a demigod. It was because of vivid memories that he was despised by humans and ignored by the gods since childhood. Because of that, he did not want anyone to see this real heart, which is a symbol of a demigod, and he didn't even believe in himself, so he erased it from his mind and only recalled it for a certain amount of time. I stumbled and stepped back. "Hey, sorry." The door was open. "Come here." So, unlike what I thought, he would be terribly angry at me, threatening me, and erasing my memories. Abel was surprisingly gentle and showed it to me. Inside the box covered with gloomy glow was a fluttering red heart. It was a bloody red heart that was as clear as his eyes. He was reciting in front of me the secret that he tried not to tell anyone, even the female lead in the original story. He was trying to hide until the end. "This heart is real, so if you stab it, I'll die." Because of the curse, Abel cannot have a real heart in his body. Because of this, he doesn't know his feelings, and he's never really been loved. He believes that love is obsession and obsession is madness. As soon as he saw the female lead, he tried to kill all the people around her with a possessive desire, and he tried to imprison her. Abel, who was born in the spirit of 1,000 spirits and became a half-reaper with the greed of men, was even cursed by Solar, and was born with his red-threaded heart removed. That's why he needed someone to get rid of the red thread and put his real heart in its place and make him immortal, and that's Saintess Lucia. That's why Abel was so obsessed with her. As Abel stared down at me stuttering, his eyes sank at his thoughts, and he sighs deeply. "Are you going to use me too?" "What? You used me?" Bang! As Abel knocked down the wall, the temple, which was still unstable, shed a few pieces of stone. The feelings of pressure flowed out, but I looked straight at him, struggling with nausea. I was thinking, let's do this. It was better to settle it clearly at this time. Since we have unintentionally shared our lifespan, it would be better to win-win. As you wish, I'll help you become immortal. Instead, keep me safe until then. Is that it? What? Do you want anything more? When asked, Abel sighed with his red eyes slightly open. His red eyes, always arrogant, shake wildly. Abel, who hesitated for a long time, said to me, "Do you really don't have any feelings?" I was speechless for a moment. Feelings, feelings. It felt strange as the word came out of Abel's mouth. A reaper who doesn't know feelings. Honestly, I know that he has lived a much pitiful life than at first glance in the original story, and he is a man who is more lacking than expected. But it's out of my scope. I'm sorry. I think it would be good to not care about each other and stay as we are now. As I bend my eyes to pretend I don't know, emphasizing like it is now, his eyes shake as if he was a little hurt. I flinched without knowing, but turned around pretending to be calm. I felt the glowing red eyes fiercely behind my back, but I closed the door without looking back. I thought it was a very wise decision, even for me and for Abel and for the unspecified majority. But the very next day, I realized that the decision was terribly wrong. Miss Lion, please stop him. It was a sin to overlook the fact that the other person was Abel, not anyone. As the weeping priests rumbled, I was led to the field, and there was Abel in a strange form. Abel, who pulled up his death scythe, was like a real reaper. Only once, it looked different from the one I saw at the Temple of Lemda at that time that he threatened. Chop, chop. Whenever he wields the scythe of death, the bodies and souls of the monsters and other spirits are cut off. They screamed, "Stop, Abel, stop. What are you doing?" The temple was trying to restore all the souls that had been hardly gathered to maintain its solidarity and power. That was the reason he went hunting so hard until he was covered with blood. But there was only one thing that suddenly hit him wrong. "Hey, don't mind me. You said we shouldn't care about each other. As long as I don't die, isn't it? I won't ask for your treatment, so leave me alone." Abel, spitting out, wasn't even looking this way. Whether he was firmly upset or offended, I was stunned by a very cold attitude and only smiled. Is he supposed to be such a childish guy? The behavior of the Reaper was terrifying. Unlike the usual pompous appearance, wielding a sickle with red eyes was really like a god of death. It was like a sulky little boy. Abel, even though he would normally giggle when I call his name, he doesn't even give a glance at all with his bright arrogant red eyes, as if proving that he was very upset because of me. Blood-light eyes shining brightly. His eyes were distracted for a while on the side like a tightly closed sculpture, but he shook his head soon. Even so, I didn't mean to ignore what I said yesterday. It's not what I can do, and I don't intend to. Even at that moment, red threads were growing on Abel's body. It's a forest of thorns, so every time he spreads his wings, his body gets more scratched. Somehow, I was more worried about him than the pieces of souls that were transmitted. "What are you doing?" When I looked back, I saw an image of the place that used to be a forest 5 seconds ago became desolate. If continued to be left alone, he would destroy the entire forest. He's not even a real brat. The faces of the believers are getting worse and worse, and I tried to steal the sword of the skeleton captain standing next to me. It's not a sword that humans can hold. After hearing the nagging, I whispered to one of the Nefer tribes, a cat monster next to me, "Shoot that and drop it." "Ho, how dare I? Give me." I gleefully snatched the bow. I tried to pull the bow with the attitude that I had seen at the Great Drama and Archery Olympics, but in the first place, there was no way a monster's bow would move in my hand. What's so tight? With pain as if my finger was being cut off, I moaned and forcibly pulled the bow, but my finger rubbed against the tip of the bow, which made a small cut. "It smells like blood," someone whispered like a moan. I quickly put my finger in my mouth, but the monsters who already smelled human blood flashed their eyes. I was hiding behind the skeleton captain sadly, because he had no nos, and I realized that the raging frenzy has stopped. Ouch! Abel snatched me like an eagle's prey, and started flying straight to the temple. I'm scared. It's scary. I didn't have a fear of heights, but the feeling of flying in the air without a seat belt was terrible. A sharp wind struck my face, causing my cheeks to tingle. Crash! Fragments of the window splatter all over the place, but Abel melted it in the air. Abel entered the temple and dropped me roughly into the room. There was no shock because it was a fluffy carpet, but I couldn't come to my senses after suddenly sitting at a low altitude. Several round pills were pushed into my mouth. Oof. Swallow, idiot. Who does this stupid calls an idiot? I doubted my ear, but gulped it over. An indescribable bitter taste circulated in my mouth, so I looked for water in a hurry. Probably not poison. As Abel rolled his eyes as I drank water, he moved back and forth in her room and roared. "The Nefer guys have poisoned frog blood on their weapons. How do you carelessly touch it without fear?" Abel, terribly distorting his face, groaned. Somehow, the taste of my blood was bitter, so it must have been poisoned. However, it was not surprising to know that my body can withstand poison after several trials and curses did not work. No red thread has ever affected me, except for Abel, who is in front of me. Seeing that injury because of his raging, I was sad when I thought I have to treat it again. When I was heartbroken, Abel grabbed my chin. Look, Abel grabbed my chin and looked around my eyes to make sure that I was fine by the poison frog, and none of my veins burst. You stupid. You're weak. Damn, everything is a mess since I met you. Abel, who had blurred his words, suddenly became quiet. Looking down at the red thread hanging on my wrist, more shiny than before, chills travel my back, raising my gaze, and the bright red eyes are looking down at me, his gaze shining deeply as if he was craving for something. His pale neck under his chin moves greatly. I felt a sense of crisis, and I quickly turned my head and let go of his touch. Let's start with treatment. Huh. I laughed out loud at Abel as he stepped back and cleared up the clutter on the bed and said, "Are you kidding me? Don't be like a child. Come and sit down. Because of you, you almost killed the believers. Are you really not aware? Or no? I know. Come and sit down." Abel looked at me with a dazed look. Although he asked for an explanation with bright red eyes, I calmly motioned to the bed. He tried to avoid my hand as if it had been on fire, and tried to raise his body like a freshly caught fish. Eventually, he frowns at his handsome brow and makes a stride. "Get out. Ugh, hurry up." "Absolutely no. It gets worse as time passes. It's harder to treat when it's old. Do you know my hardships? This dull girl. Get out." Unsuccessfully, I failed to control my power, and unfortunately, I fell on top of Abel's naked body. Fortunately, my wit did not crush his wound, but touched the ambiguous part of his thigh. And I had to feel his masculinity clearly revealed. You're very solid." My eyes were fluttering quickly in embarrassment, and Abel, who was looking at me, met my eyes. Ruby-like eyes were burning. In a fierce glance that seemed to be infested with something, I coughed off my palm from his chest. I rolled my eyes to push the embarrassment and regret, and opened my mouth awkwardly. Do you want to show it? Get out. Get out now." Abel's terrifying momentum suddenly kicked me out of the room, and I stayed out of the room for a long time. Then the priests, including the believers, roasted me sweetly. "What happened to the master? Is it serious? Go ahead and tell me." "I don't know." The next day, today Abel avoided me all day. If it were normal, he would have called me from early morning, but I didn't even get stuck in the office doing what he was doing. I was embarrassed at the time. He was very much a man, and I felt like I will feel guilty when I saw his face. I met Karen in the backyard. As soon as he saw me, Karen, who had stroked the mane of some giant creature, greeted me with a soft smile. "Hello, lion. Are you having a good afternoon? What are you doing there? It's a mud floor, so there's a high risk of slipping. Stay there. I'll go." When I was curious about what he was doing, he approached with anxious eyes and even escorted me directly. After all, he's my favorite. I glanced at him. I didn't get tired of looking at Karen's handsome side profile, who I had only touched on text and now saw it in real life. But what is this? After looking at his side for a while, I looked at the creature that Karen was petting. It was a black horse with 6 legs of a gigantic figure that seemed like where 3 adults had easily escaped from in a nightmare, or a graffiti-like bizarre figure drawn by a 7-year-old kid. It's a monster called Sleipnir. It's a little different from the middle world. The black mane that continues from the head flutters like a firework, and it has a CG-like shape that will not be inferior to appearing in a fantasy movie right now. That's cool. The mane looks like a flame. It's a flame. But it doesn't burn living things. Would you like to touch it? Fireworks. Since I have been living here for 5 years, I have seen a creature similar to a horse even though I have been riding the clouds even in this world. The means of transportation were still expensive, and I patted its mane with flashing eyes. "It's not really hot and it feels like you're touching a fluffy silk fabric," I exclaimed purely. "It's really cool, right? You're a human with a good aesthetic sense. I like it." I turned my head in embarrassment, and Karen shook his head with an embarrassing smile. At the moment of confusion, Sleipnir, chewing on something, turned his head and talked. "Why, what's wrong? What did the monster say?" I'm sorry. I can't speak the middle world." "Excuse me." I apologized quickly and politely based on my experience. In this world, plants have intelligence and it's no surprise that horses speak. When I think about it, it would be funny to talk about companion animals. All of a sudden, I remembered Bert, who I had left at home. My cat is an all-black short-nosed mixed race that resembles Camembert cheese. It's been 5 years since I haven't seen it, but I don't know if it's living well. Shortly before coming here at the time, my mother, who thought my eye disease was due to Belle's molt, left Belle at my aunt's house. As I thought of Belle, I missed my house fiercely. Suddenly he looked at me wonderingly with a somber expression, comforting me silently with the tip of his nose. Even though he could speak, and seeing Sleipnir became even more sad. Bell, why are you like this, human? As I hugged his head and cried out for Bell, the embarrassed Sleipnir swung his 6 legs, and Karin was restless because he didn't know what to do. Abel didn't find me until dinner time was up, but his demeanor was cold, his eyes still didn't make contact, and he's certainly in a Cold War state. Are you mad at that? What's going on? I hated being so embarrassed, but I had to remain silent as well. It was frustrating at first, but it became a more stuffy mealtime. With only the sound of the dishes hitting, I ate dinner in silence, grabbed my cup of coffee, and looked out of the window. Dark clouds gather in the dark gray sky. For some reason, I didn't even read a medical book to get sentimental, and I felt strange. What are you thinking about with your expression? Abel spoke to me for the first time today. However, in a very uneven tone. With his eyes glued to the papers, I was so sad I couldn't fight. I mumbled powerlessly, sweeping the cake down with a fork. Bert, what? Cat, my adorable cat. How cute and arrogant he is, even though he is a male. I remember him after seeing Sleipnir earlier. You thought of a boy. With the papers thrown out, Abel's eyes, who were suddenly open wide, were burning sizzlingly. I'll kill that guy. He twisted his bright red lips fiercely and crushed his swear words. I don't understand where the hell such a violent reaction is coming from, and whether this is a joke or a new concept. I blanked out for a moment. Only then, when Abel, who was trying to leave the office wearing the robe, I got scared and grabbed his robe. No, it's not like that. It's a cat, it's just our cat. What? Let me go, where's that guy? It's not here. Oh, it's not in this world. Abel, who opened the door with a terrifying momentum, turned his back to a stop. He then turned his head and looked down at me as I grabbed the hem of his robe. Did you mean a spirit? I don't know, it's not here anyway. It's not. In the gap, I quickly closed the office door and put my back on it. And as I push him back to the desk, Abel, who was thinking for a moment, sits in front of the desk and pulls out a quill. Even though it's a simple quill, it looks like a weapon when he holds it. While I was on the lookout, Abel unfolded some parchment and said bluntly, describe the baby's name and appearance. Bert, full name is Camembert Cheese. It was unpleasant to dare to refer to my cutie as a baby, but I started explaining it quietly because baby was right. The whole body is black, but the tip of the tail and 4 feet are white as if wearing shoes. The eyes are yellow, and, as I said that, I started to think that I was a cat butler without realizing it. It's usually very arrogant, but when I'm tired, he knows how to be cute. You don't have to say anything like that. Abel groaned. He squeezed his handsome eyebrows as if he hated to hear the pet bragging, and he spread the parchment, and over it he drew and erased a few lines, and the graffiti drawing was similar to a cat. Wow, is that power? It doesn't seem to be mentioned in the original story, but as he was a reaper, I wondered if he could know the life or death of a specific creature, and waited quietly, and soon black smoke flowed out of the parchment and created a shape. Then, as Abel's pale face turned red even to his ears, out of the smoke, the black cat hopped. Was it a real cat? Bert? Either that or not. I hugged Bert, who was made of smoke. Oh, Bert, it's nice to see you. You've been well, and your eyes are sparkly. The belly fat, which used to be a little plump, has fallen sideways, and the length of his body has grown, so it looks considerably slimmer. Oh, Bert. Abel, who had returned to his face color, hesitated for a moment. I can't bring it because it's not dead. Then it means it's alive, right? It was 2 years old at the time, so now it is 7 years old. That's pretty old for a cat. Although the cat's lifespan is quite long, I was worried about whether it would get hurt or injured, but I was very happy with the healthy appearance. But Abel, who noticed me, gave me a grotesque answer. Should I kill it and bring it back? What? Are you crazy? As soon as I got angry, he looked at me with an expression that he doesn't understand why I am angry. I don't understand more about you. Why are you killing my cat, who is living well? As I hugged the dreamy fake Bert, Abel made an indescribable look. He might have thought that I could express such feelings all over again, and he asked with a confused expression as a colorful expression passed over his pale, sculptural face. Are you sad because you wanted to see that? Yes, but I saw it so healthy. It has a lot it wants to do. It have to live for a long time. You can't see it right now instead. I've seen it like this. It's okay because it's living well. Can I see human beings with this? Although it was an illusion, it seemed to be projecting the current image, so maybe I could see my family and friends as well, so I looked at him and asked, but Abel shook his head with a somewhat expressionless face. When humans die, they go to the underworld. They can't come up to Valhalla. Why? Because there is a lot of karma and the soul is heavy. Are you saying they are sinful? This is the first time I knew. Perhaps that is the reason why there are no humans. Somehow I felt anxious, but Abel said something. Huh? Human life is too short. So, if I become a complete reaper, do you want me to make you immortal? It was a sudden word, but Abel's eyes were sincere. I'm not interested in living long. I'm interested in going back. I don't want to live eternal life in a world like this. I saw a red thread running through his heart. Suddenly, the real heart in the box came to mind. I know the location roughly. At the time, Abel said something too embarrassing, and I was so surprised that I didn't even think to touch it. But when I heard the word, immortal, I thought belatedly, even if he doesn't have to meet Lucia, can I release the curse? If I absorb the red thread that was wrapped around and connected to his heart, he becomes immortal. Abel looked like he was going to die from upsetness. He didn't put the word "I like you" in his mouth. I don't know if it's his pride or what, but the moment he said that, it was a pity for me, thinking of settling the relationship. Wherever Abel went that night, he did not return to the temple. I couldn't sleep even though I was lying down, looking at the ceiling blankly, and his real heart came to mind again. Since Abel is not here, let's touch it once. Luckily, if you succeed, it's good, and if you fail, I can give up early and find another route. In this case, my determination was unnecessary fast. When I woke up, I was already in my thin pajamas, sneaking behind and heading for the abandoned temple. It was dark and there was no moonlight, so it seemed like a background that would appear in a hazy horror movie, but I only walked forward. Even in the middle of the day, there was nothing more scary about the place where the ghost and the skeleton were spinning, so I walked with only one slightly whitish lamp hanging. Kick, with a unique creepy sound of iron gates, I entered the temple. It was a place I had been to before, so I was able to head towards the altar where the heart was hidden without getting lost. The half-broken demon statues standing on both sides groaned grotesquely every time a candle was lit. People are more scary than ghosts. It's somewhere here, scour it. We don't have much time. Yep, there is a buzzing voice and a dizzying sound of footsteps. Believers wandering around in the abandoned temple where no one comes to look while the owner of the temple is away. Unless you were going for a treasure hunt race on a moonlit night, the answer was one. Shoot. I quietly recited the swear words at a wonderful timing, and I closed the box with the product treasure, hid it in my arms, and began to escape to the corner. No one can have my lifeline. Abel wasn't a villain from the start. Because of the immortal power and demands from the fanatics, he leaves the church empty and runs around, eventually being exiled over the brink of dying by the rebellion. In the process, he was seriously injured, lost a lot of power, and became a scout to the villain group Apocalypse. But because of me, he never left the church empty, and I thought there was no gap for rebellion, but it's awful. The unchanging law of the original story is really scary. No matter how much it is, they are aiming for the heart. Of course, I see that destroying the heart is the easiest way to deal with Abel. It is said that the villain, which is an obstacle to the female lead, is handled early. But if my red thread is connected, things are very different. I screamed silently and hid behind the altar, hugging Abel's hearted box tightly like it was a lover. Hearing the random footsteps, the sound of opening the door, and the harsh voice of swearing, the door opened. Kick, I hear several sounds that pull something. The sound of footsteps getting closer to my back. I hold a piece of glass that has fallen quietly, thinking that the human smell will be caught right away. But surprisingly, the footsteps scatter in all directions. It seemed that they didn't notice me. Thanks to this box. I looked down at the box and I glanced at the dusty altar. It was darkened, but thanks to the red thread, I could see how many were there. I told you to find the box here. Plucks, the socks, it's a box. It's the zombie squad. Half bodies with red threads for stupid conversations embedded in the brain, not the heart. With a sluggish, stupid look, zombies with giant screws stuck in the temple were limping around. I quietly stuck to the wall, relieved that they weren't the Gangshi or other fast-paced ghosts like Kappa. Swoosh. I slowly moved my steps to the sound of their slow footsteps. The old window was kicked. A nearby zombie raised his head at the sharp crackling sound. Dum-dum. Did you hear anything? It's a sound from your rattling head. It's not a hound, it's a sound. You're a fool, Bindon. What? I was able to come out to the entrance of the altar, leaving behind their fights with stupid voices. I put the box firmly in my arms, sticking the back to the wall, and inspecting the outside movements. Whenever I heard a humming sound, I hid into the shadowed place because of the ceiling arch. I barely went through the corridor, but at the entrance of the temple, I could see a bunch of torches already flickering. What the F? I swear words, but it was either to die or to live. Anyway, if I get caught here, the heart will be lost. Hiding among the demon statues, I barely advanced to the entrance. They were growling and talking. I can't find anything. I said it was obviously here. Isn't it already stolen? The monster with thorns sprouted all over his body snarled. The shadow of a huge wall built to fit the body of a monster was enough to hide me. No, if you look for it, it's definitely there. He wouldn't have thought of hiding it elsewhere, because his mind is being sold to the human girl these days. It was one of the senior executives. He was the one who clung to Abel as a loyal servant. He was good to me, and then you hit the back of our head like this. I expected it, but when I actually saw it, I was throbbing. If I'm like this angry, what about Abel, the person involved? Yes, Abel. Abel, where the hell has this kid gone? I grind my teeth and look up to the gray sky. But the miracle of the Reaper Abel flying did not happen. Catch it, catch it. That woman must have taken the heart. Why is the road endless? I ran and ran again, proud of being the fastest speed in my life. I ran to death until I got a sweet smell in my mouth, so I should be there after coming out at this point. But strangely, the central temple didn't appear even if I went. You can't run away from the barrier. Give the heart, woman. I looked back at the dozens of monsters chasing me, shut up and started running again. I got tired of running, and I fell into the hills of the side road, and somehow a familiar place, where there is jiggly black mud. The shadows flickered among the thick black trees. What's all this fuss about? A black horse with 6 legs, shaking his mane, stepped out. Sleipnir, who had just woke up, blankly blinked its dark red eyes, looked at me once and at the monsters who were chasing with an eye the size of my fist. What kind of accident happened to you? I heard that you are a human of great importance. I gasped, grabbing my heart that was about to burst and the box containing Abel's heart in my arms. Well, they're aiming for Abel, huffed, heart. Oh my, come on, get on. Whether he believed me or saw the box I had, Sleipnir gave me his back without asking or questioning. The black mane that had been burning sprang up and pulled my arm. With a scream, I gently settled on the large, smooth back, and I was able to face the hordes of monsters who arrived late. Sleipnir, what are you doing? Why are you taking the side of a human woman? Dozens of monsters that shocked and frightened me before I settled on the back of a giant black horse now seemed like nothing. After all, it's good to have a backup. I held onto his reins. The monsters in front of the burning hell horse retreated, and a familiar face appeared among them. Sleipnir, there must be a misunderstanding, but the girl stole the heart of the Reaper without knowing. You mean the Master's heart? Only the Master, as far as I know, knows the location, but how did you know it was stolen? The girl was suspicious and ran. They're lying without batting an eyelid. I remembered his name and squeezed the reins. Sleipnir, a loyal horse, responded steadfastly and confidently. Anyway, she is someone who my master cares about anyway. Even if you accused her for a crime, it's up to the master of the temple to judge. Now, clear the way. Are you not believing our words? Your master and even you. Why are you covering for that sleazy human woman? There's no one bad who cares about animals. Besides, my aesthetic sense is also excellent. Sleipnir raised his forefoot, bursting with a laugh, and he started to run up the sky at an amazing speed. A black flame fluttered from 6 hoofs. You didn't say you were going to fly. Isn't it natural as the world's best monster? Without the permission of Abel, the owner of the temple, no one could leave the temple. Anyone. Because of this, we had to play tag inside the temple. Eventually, the demons followed us with forbidden wings. No one could fly except Abel in the temple, but no one could catch up with the fastest monster in the world. He even kicked, breaking the barriers that had been engulfed in smoke, and sprinting to the main temple. Plop, plop. There was no one who couldn't wake up to the sound of 6 hoofs that could make the earth ring. What the hell is this? In the mess, finally the skeleton captain, sadly he couldn't hear the sound well because he didn't have an ear, came out, and the bloody chase could be stopped for a while. Uyuda, who had wiped his greasy forehead covered in sweat, gasped and said, "That human girl, stealing Abel's heart and running away, I'm about to catch her." Fuck, no this isn't. Anyway, no. You think I'm crazy and steal the Reaper's heart. You know obviously that the obsessed man will chase me until I die. Well, look. The girl who lives with such vulgar words can't be silent. Because I heard all the screams to let go of the heart. Quiet. The voices echoing from the skeleton captain made everyone quiet. The skeleton captain draws a bone sword and says, "Anyway, she is the woman Lord Abel cares about. Step back." At that time, the monsters that were crowded split like the Red Sea. In the middle of it stood Abel in black armor. Abel glanced through the believers around me with his expressionless face and finally looked at me. In an instant, his blood-red eyes flashed his feelings, but quickly disappeared like a shooting star. "Reaper, this girl ran away with your heart." Look. At Uyuda's cry, Abel looked down at my hand. I was holding a box of his heart. It was true that I touched it, opened it, and, technically, ran away with it. I was sure I heard them cry out to bring his heart out. I heard 100 more times, but there was no evidence. When I was in a chase with Sleipnir, they didn't say a word, so I was the only one who heard it. Lord Abel and that girl are connected to the thread of destiny, and it is the truth that we all know openly. That woman must have stolen his heart to run away and gain freedom. The blood-red eyes turned to me. Unlike usual, it was an unfeeling gaze, and my heart is somehow stinging at the insensitive gaze of the god of death itself. As a habit, I gave a gaze to the red thread connected to his chest, and slowly opened my mouth as I made eye contact with his sharpening gaze. It's true that I touched your heart and wanted to get freedom. I didn't intend to do that. Give it to me. Abel, who was staring at me, reached out his hand. I thought he was asking for the box, and I pushed it. But Abel stretched out his hand and pulled my hand holding the box. In an instant, the cold energy was trapped in his warm arms. The cold armor touched my cheek. Just say no. He lowered his head deeply as if to bury his lips in the nape of my instinctively stiff neck, whispering in a voice mixed with madness. A voice that seemed to explode at any moment broke through the ears. From me, you tried to run away. Just say no. Just say that one word. No. The arms that held me trembled at the firm words. The blood eyes, which seemed to explode at any moment, stopped trembling. The fire gradually decreases. The box in my arms was shaking like crazy. I said calmly, I decided to make you immortal. I was just trying to touch your heart because it might be a clue. But they are aiming for your heart. I ran away with it. The rest of my words were blocked by a long finger. The desired answer had already come out. Abel, probably with the time and why of this case. It was clear that he didn't care about anything. Then you'll be thinking of running away from now on. He forced me to answer about my future aspirations. I hesitated for a moment and looked into Abel's eyes. The blazing bloody eyes are still not cooled down. It had only been decreasing for a while, and it was clear that it would burn again if the fire was ignited at any time. Of course, I have no intention of running away with my own feet. If you sever the relationship fairly, I will. After finishing my thought in an instant, pretending not to be distressed at all, I responded calmly. No. The moment I look up in bewilderment, the cold arms curl around the nape of my neck like a snake. You won't run away. You don't intend to do that. Say it clearly in front of me, so that all the monsters here can hear it. He twisted his head like a psycho, and his pupils, like 300 eyes, stared drunkenly at me and whispered. It was exactly as described in the story. Yonder villain, a crooked reaper who would cut down even the gods if he was wronged. I mumbled, looking straight ahead at the bright red eyes that were said to be the rarest and highest price among rubies. I'm not running away. I've never run away from you, and I don't intend to do that in the future. Really? The red corners on his mouth rise. All the monsters in the temple, including myself, gasped for a shallow breath at the guilty feeling through my whole body. It was the first time I almost died in my life. That's what you said with your mouth. Obviously, yourself. Doesn't it seem like it's a little bit because of yourself? Though he was trembling, whether it was or not, the Reaper, who had been drowned in emotions, was cheering silently using all sorts of facial expressions. It seems like I've never seen Abel smile, facing the handsome face in front of my nose, and for a moment I was speechless. Yuta also looked like that. Human bitch, why do you do that? That bitch stole the heart. With the situation going differently than he expected, Yuta stuttered his words as if he was speechless. I didn't steal it, this guy really. Would you like to have a conflict with me? We didn't expect an all-out war, but we can't do much now. Crash, the sound of irons was heard, and the demons gathered like factions behind Yuta raised their weapons. All of them were full of evil energy, but in the meantime, I sometimes saw weapons with the divine power of light. They were lethal to Abel. I don't need a god who doesn't do its job by being possessed by a girl or something. Why are you aiming the blade at the Reaper? It seems that this pathetic man who wraps around humans is called a Reaper. Since half of him is human, do you feel a sense of kinship? The skeleton captain and Yuta raised their voices and began to fight. I glanced at Abel's side, but I was contemplating whether he understood the situation or he was not interested. And the person concerned did not respond much. It was then. Abel, lion, it was Karen. Where the hell have you been? I wonder if he has only appeared. He was full of the smell of pine needles peculiar to the forest, and both hands are filled with something. He alternately looked at the skeleton army and demons who were in confrontation, and came to this side as if he knew the situation at once. He whispered, "Are they rebelling?" Well, it's similar. The process is different, but the result is the same. Of course, I thought everything would be okay because there was no reason. But it is the original story after all. Even in the midst of that, Yuta was talking eagerly. When he was urged to pull out the red thread stuck in his heart, it was very thick, he said. It seems like it is a thread of fate. If I eat that girl, well, no matter how much of a god you are, you'll taste the same pain. No, would it be half body, since you're half too? That's not funny. What did you say? What and how? Abel, who had been quiet all the time, intervened. I thought I didn't want to get choked again, so I tried to sneak off, but Abel held me tight and pushed me behind him. Karen, take Lion and leave the temple. Abel, spreading his huge wings, commanded in a voice full of power. With the black hair, he was like a real reaper. It's a visual that I couldn't get used to even if I look at it. Wait a minute. Then what about you? Abel was crushed by a power and couldn't say anything for a while, and when asked belatedly, Abel tickled his cold expression a little. If you're here, it doesn't help. You can go and sleep. You bearish girl. What are you going to do? I'm good, so take her to a safe place. If there's a problem, I'll kill you first. Realizing his sincerity, Karen immediately agreed and faithfully hugged me. Abel's death scythe flinched, and I saw the creeping Sleipnir approaching, and he put me on top of it to take hold of the reins. Clip, clop, and Sleipnir familiarly avoided the monsters, and Karen drew his sword to block the road and deal with the ghosts. Holding Karen's waist, I looked behind. Abel had already pulled out the death scythe and was stirring up the temple. In the original book, Abel fights right before his death, but he barely escapes. But how far is that right before death? He will be fine. As long as the heart is here, he will not die. Karen seemed to reassure me, but I felt uncomfortable as I was leaving Abel. It was ominous and uncomfortable. Of course, the heart was with me, so he shouldn't die, but Abel is half human. Injuries are painful and do not recover until it is healed. Then, if any of the limbs are cut off, oh my God. The moment when my face was turning blue because of the worst situation that I think of belatedly. Karen pulled hard on the reins. Sleipnir, who had suddenly stopped as if slipping, grumbled. It's blocked. As he said, the demons flocked to the sky and the entrance to the forest while spreading their wings. They look like bats, but with limbs, they are very nasty ghosts who drink blood. They don't seem to have any intention of letting us go easily by the rumbling manner. Karen, who passed the reins to me, jumped down and pulled his sword out. I will stop it. Run as far as possible and hide. I will pursue Sleipnir's traces. But there are still too many. It wasn't enough to deal with alone. The demons are also known to have excellent regenerative power. They don't die unless you break their head. Of course, it was comforting that Karen's red thread wasn't as thick as Yuyuta's, but nonetheless. When I made a confused look, Karen took my hand. Unlike Abel's always cold hands, his hands were warm like the living. Do you remember yesterday? Wait, like that time. I'll go pick you up. Don't worry. He seemed to be talking about escorting me to avoid slipping in the mud. Maybe it's because I had such a spectacular night, it feels like a thing of the past. I nodded my head in vain. I'll make sure to survive and not die from Abel. Karen smiled with a polite and gentle smile, and the streets quickly opened because of Sleipnir, who soon started to move. The demons attacked, but pong. The demons freak out, frightened by the shock wave, and several fluttering white pieces of light fall. Please keep it secret. Behind Karen's back, floating with a sad smile, white wings were flapping. The incarnation of the heavenly body. His black hair was stained with gray hair. He was an all-white man. Will it look like this when an angel comes down? At the same time, I couldn't keep my mouth shut because I was amazed, and at the same time I couldn't hide my embarrassment. I know that Karen never goes back to the main body in order not to be found out from Luce. After leaving Luce, Karen should have a meeting with the female lead. He did. The more I thought, the more my head seemed to hurt. Everything is twisted and messy. The original story. What is the meaning of the original to me? No. Was there anything like that in the first place? I felt an unknown sense of shame. Clip, clop, with the sound of Sleipnir's hoof, which sounds like it's somehow slowing down. White wings seemed to flutter in front of me for a while. It is only a moment that the white wings turn black. I won't run away. 10 minutes after I said it, I was running away. It's a terrible contradiction. Yeah, right. At this time, my determination was uselessly fast. Return. Sleipnir. Return. What? What do you mean? Let's go back. Hat. I knew it. You too. If he were human, he would have shined his white teeth and put his thumb up. Sleipnir turned around with a smooth drift and began to run up to the temple. Let's go through the back door. Yes, Sleipnir. He looked terribly excited. He went around the temple. Structurally, when you enter the front door, the front yard opens out. There was no place to hide because it was in the middle of nowhere. Crash. As I asked, 6 strong hoofs smashed the door. And while I was there, I searched the drawers and grabbed the parchment and the medicines I had made. Money is the best everywhere, so I took the jewels and gold coins. When I carried the heavy bag, it felt like I was playing GTA, in which I stole a horse and committed crimes. We drifted nonchalantly and stood in front of Abel. Abel, who was just about to swing the death scythe, looked at me with an absurd expression. He didn't say a word. His pale cheeks are a mess with blood splatter. I couldn't see it because of the black armor, but the red thread was entangled in him, suggesting that he was seriously injured. My chest tingles. Abel, who took a breath, gasping for a moment, got angry. Why come back, you stupid girl? You don't want to be around me. Are you going to commit suicide? Do you think they'll let you leave like that again? Damn, if I die, I'll bring you to death by my side. Again and again. Abel's red eyes widened as his focus shifted and his lips were blocked. I said, energetically, I'm here because of you. You've been arguing to me not to run away until a while ago. But why are you telling me to run away this time? Go away, you stupid woman. You're more likely to get hurt. I'm not leaving you, you idiot. What? This time, Abel's eyes widened. Even in the midst of the tumult, monsters gathered from all sides. Since Sleipnir was also a fairly advanced monster, they could not recklessly approach Abel's energy he emitted, but that was only for a short time. Their numbers are much higher. The girl is useful. Kill the Reaper and capture the girl. He was still alive. It was Yuyuta, who was screaming from the back as if he didn't want to die. One leg has already been covered with blood. As soon as he said, charge, the green head was pierced by something. It was a bone sword with a deep energy. The traitor's head fell and rolled in vain. Reaper, we'll take care of this. Digger was the skeleton captain who rolled Yuyuta's head off. He had already lost one of his arms, but raised his bone sword with his valiantly left arm. Sleipnir, who struck his front legs, ran fiercely, and Abel's death scythe took care of the monsters in the way. Arrows full of magic flew in all directions, but Abel spread his wings, and I didn't get hit. How long have we been running? And bang! A roar was heard along with the sound. When I turned around, the temple was blazing with the fire of death. The fire of death that even burns the soul. Abel is gone and the immortal temple maintained by his power is destroyed. There was only one line in the story, but it was so terrible to see it with my own eyes. Look ahead. When I gasped quietly, Abel grabbed my head with his bloody hand and turned it back. Abel didn't look behind him in the end, but his hand, holding the reins, had veins all over. The red thread on my wrist was getting thicker. The breathing that touches my ear is irregular. Looking back instinctively, Sleipnir stopped urgently. His bright red eyes were dim, they were losing light. Abel, I supported him as he toppled and laid him under a tree. I'll keep an eye. Sleipnir went on a patrol to prevent the approaching monster. The red thread was too short on his chest, so it was in a state of wrapping his whole body around him. I panicked and brought my ear to his lips, and his breath was narrow. Abel, wake up, please. But he muttered something that didn't make sense to me and closed his eyes. His heart was beating faintly. The wheezing sound of breathing is harsh. Perhaps his lung was injured. I wasn't sure because I wasn't a doctor, but I knew when I saw a red thread that was split into several branches like roots digging through his chest. I hastily pulled out the box in my arms and flipped it open. The red thread is getting constricted, and black stuff is oozing out. It was just like blood. I was terrified. Without time to think about the female lead, I took a deep breath and, with a trembling hand, pressed my finger to Abel's blood-stained heart. Ugh. At the same time, I was choked by a pain that seemed to squeeze my heart tight. There was a beeping sound from my ears, and the front of my eyes turned black and then dark, and my vision was cut off for a while. Breathing in sounds like a flute. I looked inside the box with blurred vision. The heart in the box is still wrapped in red thread. Only the part I touched, the line was slightly blurred, but it was still in good shape. I couldn't even imagine how much pain it would take to get rid of it all. What am I supposed to do? However, as I was about to reach out my hand again, I coughed heavily. Blood spurted out. The stomach churning pain barely subsided, and I crawled over to Abel, crawling on the floor. His face was still pale and sullen. Here, it didn't say he died here. But why? The back of my head tingles. It seems that I was too blind to the original book without knowing it. What was the difference between those fanatics and me? Abel was dying. Gradually, his breathing thinned, and the sound of his heart fades. Knowing it was a fake heart, I pressed his chest like crazy with my brittle arms. It was when I covered his nose and breathed into his mouth, as I had seen somewhere. The moment our lips touched, I could see a few strands of the red thread scattered around Abel's chest were falling apart. My mouth, my lips, a thought flashed through my mind. I cannot directly touch the internal wound. Immediately I pulled Abel's neck and hit his lips. What he couldn't swallow ran out of his chin, but I kissed him without hesitation. The red thread that had dug into his heart like a root began to thin. When I opened my eyes, the surroundings were bright. As I rolled my eyes at the rustling sound, I saw pale silver hair in the distance. Why are you making a bonfire in the morning? Unaware, I groaned as I tried to get my upper body up. The whole body seemed to be beaten. He turned his head at the thin groan. The wide open eyes returned to the vivid blood color. Damn, if you're awake, tell me. Abel approached me and hugged me tightly. While I was in his arms, I watched him closely. The red thread on his wrist was tapering back. The red thread that pierced his body like a hedgehog was barely visible. Except for a few scratches visible to the naked eye, his condition appeared to be quite good. Sleipnir, who watched the thrilling reunion while chewing oats, said delightfully, "It's very fortunate that you woke up. He was so upset throughout the morning. Won't you shut up? Master, if your temper is so dirty, you can't have a relationship. I'm going to have to throw you away." Abel's face was full of smiles while reciting the harsh words. Abel asked with serious eyes, "How do you feel?" "I'm a lot better. I'm sorry," Abel murmured as his bright red eyes fluttered. "Why are your ears so red? Do you remember what happened yesterday?" As I frowned, I saw black feathers falling all over. The forgotten Karen suddenly came to mind. What about Karen? The flower smile of the Reaper disappeared. "Hey," he crumpled his eyebrows and groaned. "Are you worried about that bastard now? The guy who said to protect you and ran away. He didn't run away. He went alone to protect me. I don't know where the hell he went. He said he would follow the trail. Are you on that bastard's side right now?" As usual, Abel was incredibly serious and furious. Eventually I sighed and explained. "In conclusion, I didn't listen to Karen and went to rescue you. Have you already forgotten? Is that so?" He rolled his bright red eyes with that expression. I tried to stand up, looking pathetic at the situation, but fell back down with a groan of pain. My body was like a piece of wood had battered it. "Gravity is pressing on me," he said, holding his messy forehead. "Let's go to the village. You two need a safe place to rest. I can't go around in this way anyway. Do you remember the temple last time? The place that you brought me from? Let's go there." Sleipnir was indeed the fastest monster in the world. We arrived at Lemda village without getting lost. The town streets were buzzing as the day had just begun. Clip, clop, the sound of 6 hoofs and the mane of flames fluttering in the grass drew attention everywhere. "Isn't that Lion?" Some of the village monsters recognized me and tried to approach me, but they saw something behind me and ran away in panic. After receiving such gazes about 84 times, I arrived at the Temple of Lemda, in order to get permission to stay in the village, and to show my face. "Let's go together." Abel was supposed to follow along, but I raised my finger and refused firmly. "Wait here, I'll tell you then come out." Obviously, the priests who knew Abel's face would faint if I took him with me. In addition, the plants around him were drying out because of the black energy that I didn't like so much before. In the old days, I would have been very scared, but now that I'm used to that kind of thing, I'm so used to it. I'm so used to it. I left Abel behind and entered the temple. Bang! The door opened somewhat rough, and everyone who appeared had a change of atmosphere. Smash! A bowl of holy water that fell from someone's hand rolled over the floor. Everywhere was as quiet as a dead mouse monster. "Oh, it's a cute temple. Excuse me. I'm sorry for the dirty feet." After that, Sleipnir came in with a cheerful sound of horseshoes, like a guest visiting the house. "It's been less than 5 minutes since I told them to wait outside." Phew. He spotted me and tried to approach me, but when he saw Abel, he said, oh, and grabbed his back. The little priests rushed and supported him, and they managed to sit him in the levitation chair. 8 pupils trembled like an earthquake on his bluish forehead. Why did you come back again? Did my child do something wrong? My house was on a small hill, a little far from downtown. When I fell here in the beginning, the whole village monsters couldn't do anything about the smell of humans and were overwhelmed. And the priests, worried about it, made a separate house for me. Now, I have become well known enough to live in the middle of the village. But I was comfortable with this house, which I have been fond of for 5 years. About the time we were going up the hill along the stone road, Sleipnir announced in advance, "I'll be staying on this hill. It's cute, but it's too cramped. It's not my cup of tea." I was half convinced when I saw his size. "He will destroy it right from the entrance." But I asked politely, "Still, it's a bit difficult to put guests to sleep outside. It's more rude to put a free spirit like me to sleep in the house. I'm just grateful for your heart." Sleipnir, who coolly asked for a high five with the tip of his nose, concentrated on eating the tender leaves that were full of the hills. I decided to go downtown tomorrow and get a sugar cube. It was a very rural village, and there was nothing to steal, and there was no house key. When I opened the padded wooden bar, I can see the cutely decorated garden. I had been away for a month, but it was clear that someone had cleaned it, and there were no weeds and no dust. Instead, it's kind of weird. "What is this flower?" Abel looked at the pile of flowers in front of the front door. "What is this?" Bewildered, I picked it up and it looked familiar. Soul flower. The white, fluffy cloud-like flower is, as far as I know, the national flower of this world. At Karen's funeral, the female lead was holding it and I remembered that it was described in detail. Why are you bringing this to my house? I picked it up with cold eyes. Some were old and dry, and some were fresh as if they had just been prepared. I'm not dead. I guess I'll have to grab the neck of every monster I meet. The house was cleaner than when I left. It was certain that someone had taken care of it regularly. I looked around awkwardly as if I had come to someone else's house, and then pointed to a corner of the room. Sorry, it's small. You use the bed. I'll use the sofa. Why? You're the patient, so use the bed. You're a patient too. That's right. As I stood, I was wrapped in bandages, so I looked more like a patient than Abel. Somehow, standing in the daze, Abel stared at me. Normally, I would have avoided it casually, but something is awkward. I'm going to die of embarrassment. Every time I saw the lips that looked particularly red, I kept thinking about what happened yesterday, and I felt a bit queasy. I first turned my gaze away, and to forget the thoughts, I sat on the sofa and started organizing my bag. Gold coins, jewels, diamond rings, parchment. That's right, this. I pulled out a palm-sized heart box I had stored deep in my bag and held it out. Just looking at the box brings back the pain of yesterday and makes my shoulders tremble. It really hurts so much. Whether it was out of a sense of duty or my obsession with my lifeline, I was holding him in my arms until I collapsed yesterday, so fortunately it didn't get too wet in the rain. I pushed it out proudly like a triumphant general. But Abel, who seems to be looking around the house, ignores the box. When I was bewildered by the unexpected reaction, he spoke it out of the blue. Keep it. Why? It's yours. The probability that it would be dangerous if I had it, sadly because I'm a useless person in battle, is naturally high, so I asked a question out of pure curiosity. He opens his mouth and starts staring at me. No, what did I do? Looking at each other bewilderedly, I turned my head away with a deep sigh. I feel bad for being looked at by an idiot like that. Besides, where is the point? I don't know. Followed by sighing, I put it back deep in the bag. Fortunately, the refrigerator was plentiful. I'm sure the food was regularly refilled. Unfertilized eggs of the giant quail monster, Sir Chuchu, who were terrified at first, but acknowledged the racial differences, and sliced ham, which Sir Muno at the butcher used to personally process for me, who couldn't eat the meat that the monsters eat, cheese, milk, and various other products. Everything was there except for the seasoning. I was starving all day and was very hungry, so I decided to work a little. The main menu items included a Monte Cristo sandwich with ham and cheese, a bagel with salmon, a pancake with kakagu undiluted solution, a cheese omelet with tomatoes, and a salad made with lettuce and paprika and other sprouts. You can even cook. Abel looked at me with new eyes, blankly watching me cutting the bagel in half and browned on both sides with salmon drizzled with the sauce, sitting at the table and clenching his chin. It's just an act to make ends meet as I've been living on my own. Even if I die soon, I eat well, so my skills have improved naturally. Let's eat. Bang bang. Then someone knocked on the door. The sculptural forehead was wrinkled. Who is at dinner time? I tilted my head and walked towards the door. Lion, I just heard the news that you're back, so I'm just running. Standing in front of the door was none other than Versepo. Upon opening the door, a young man with lively green eyes. He was a pine spirit with a cute bud sprouting in the middle of the auburn-colored crown. His pointed ears were a little different, but he was close to a humanoid, and he was one of the village monsters close to Lion. This is a herb that is said to be good for wounds, and this is an herb with anti-inflammatory effects. These are kakagu fruits that Lion loves. I have something to explain, so I'm coming in for a moment. Sorry. Versepo, who found Abel just then, put on an expression that was not sure what to do. At least he didn't know Abel. Versepo was a plant fanatic, and he only roamed the forests, so he was very slow despite the rumors that everyone knew. Even so, the fact that he ran straight up like this was an obvious part of how hot the news that I was back was. Hello. I thought Lion was alone. My name is Versepo, the Pine Spirit. He held out his hand, but Abel, who for some reason hid his sullen expression, raised the corner of his mouth and meekly shook the hand. Versepo hastily withdrew his hand. His hand, which had dandelion fluff growing out of it, was burning black. Because of his energy, his vitality was taken away. What are you doing, man? Without realizing it, I clenched my lips fiercely. I quickly grabbed Versepo's hand. Treatment took precedence over anger. The red thread that quickly encroaches is about to ride up the palm of the hand and up to the arm. I wasn't in very good shape yet, but I took a deep breath and stretched out my hand. However, Abel's grabbing hand was faster. Don't use it. He looked down at me with no expression and commanded. I ignored it and tried to reach out, but my body didn't move. It was a cruel use of God's power. Let me see this. In the midst of an unbearable eye fight, Versepo, bluish pale, fell to his knees. The buds sprouting from his crown trembled pathetically. You are the master of the underworld. I'm sorry I didn't see you. Lion, I'm giving this, so make sure to cook it. I'll get going. I'm really sorry. In the meantime, Versepo, who handed me the basket, hurriedly ran down the dark hill, holding his charred hand. I tried to call him sadly, but he suddenly disappeared like a dandelion stalk blown away by a strong wind. I twisted my forehead and tried to open my mouth, but this time Abel was faster. Why don't you say that it's just a pet? The term pet he used has a more connotation of a toy rather than companion animal. Abel's bright red eyes, completely buried in darkness, fell. The sun had just set and it was pitch black all around. It was perfect for creating a sense of fear. Normally, I would have gotten scared at this point, but I couldn't see it because of my anger. What pet? I groaned and slapped my gripped wrist. How could you do such a thing? Versepo is my benefactor who has been a tremendous help for me to settle here. Among the spirits, Versepo was very shy and had a very low sociability. He was originally a herbal healer at the Temple of Lemda, but due to his passive nature, he would go to work at least once every 100 years. Not long after I fell into this world, I scoured the forest for a living and met Versepo. Versepo is my boyfriend, no, my male friend. He is neither my lover nor anything. But when I tried to explain, I gave up looking at the eyes filled with anger only. Am I talking to a gas stove right now? So, you're saying I did something wrong. No matter how hard it is, what's the point of burning his hand? I wanted to spit out nagging. Abel doesn't know much about feelings. It was still unreasonable to try to convince that stupid demigod, who had a very dichotomous thinking in the first place, of delicate human empathy or something subtle about human relationships. I promised to stay quiet and leave, but there was no need to make a fuss by pouring oil into the fire, which seems to have gotten worse these days. I felt tired and let out a sigh. No, let's stop. What? I walked past Abel, who stood stiffly, and cleared the table. When I woke up, it was morning, and I was lying on a soft mattress. It's definitely on my bed on the first floor. Apparently I slept in the upstairs attic. When I woke up, something fell. A semi-wet towel. Did he take care of me even though he was so pissed off yesterday? Feeling a bit of emotion, something absurd was coming, I called him. Abel, why didn't he answer? Did something happen? The red thread on my wrist seemed somehow thick. My spine was shivering. Abel, as I jumped out of bed, startled by the ominous instinct. My nose got stabbed by the burning smell. Moving forward, stirring off the black smoke, the source was the kitchen. Abel, who seems to be the main culprit in the act, was doing something while wiping his hands. While occasionally muttering profanity, it seems that something is wrong. I felt the threat of suffocation as I got closer, so I stopped and asked quietly, "What are you doing?" Startled, Abel hid the frying pan behind his back. I opened my eyes and held out my palms. The thin red thread fluttered with freshness. "What are you doing?" "Look, nothing. Don't play dumb while talking casually, I can see everything." The bagel, which had been deprived of life by the energy in his hand, was horribly crushed and scattered. It looked like a warlock controlling a bagel. When I pretended not to know about the tearful alchemy, I decided to take the frying pan. Fortunately, the bottom was originally black, so it was easy to pretend not to know. "Are you interested in cooking?" A little." He was still pissed off, but he got into trouble. The Reaper who tried so hard to pretend to be cool was truly miserable. Still, it was strange that he took care of me and cared for me in the morning, so I skipped the nagging. Anyway, it was only after wiping the frying pan, I used 10 kitchen towels, that I could have a proper breakfast. In the morning I went out to town. Abel followed me from a distance as if he wasn't at my party, but he got closer and walked side by side with me at the end of the day. The first place I requested for sugar cubes was at the sugar store, and the second place I stopped by was Mr. Jainen's shoe store. "Oh, Lion, Mr. Jainen." While shaking hands, the other arm is still picking the sole of the shoe. "Is the Reaper next to you?" "Nice to meet you." Unlike other priests, he calmly asked for a handshake. "Yes, you must have come to match your shoes." "Sneakers as usual." "Yes, 1 blue sneakers and 1 sandal because it's summer, please." "Let's see, I'm sure I have a set." He tells me to wait for a moment, then climbs the long ladder on one side and disappears one by one. Jainen was a shoe fanatic. He created things he had never seen before, just by looking at the descriptions and drawings of my feet. He even put out works that were better than most brand shoes in appearance and quality. He seems like a pretty smart guy. Yes, but he doesn't get recognition because of his appearance. There are classes among the monsters. Insects that look particularly ferocious. Arthropods in particular are not treated very well. The arachnids were all the same, but since there was the Cercopia priest, the arachnids were on the good side. He was a talented person to work at a shoe store in a rural village like this, but it was a pity that he was despised because of his appearance. So did I. After the conversation was over, he spit it out after a while, so I wondered what it was. When I was a kid, no one dealt with me because of this damn energy, Abel said, looking down at his pale palms. The energy of the dead that takes away life. After the Reaper chases after the friends who don't play, he accidentally kills one of his friends. When the terrified village children can't run away anymore, Abel thinks that he can only earn attention and love if he kills someone obsessively and acts provocatively. After that, as you can see, the result is a Yandere obsession. Abel's expression was getting darker and darker as if he was reminiscing about the past. It's time to say something. Emotionally, now was the time for healing. The world is in full swing here. I needed a word with an impact, something that could turn him away from blackening and becoming a villain. If it was the female lead, she would say these words well, but sadly, I couldn't think of any such words as I'm not the female lead. That's what I came up with as I was squeezing my head and hesitating. Cheer up, Abel. I'm here. I felt the urge to sew my mouth shut, and a light slowly spread across Abel's sculptural face, who had been staring blankly at me. Yes, you're here. Oh no, I mean. Without time to question, he nodded his head alone, and then I dared to say it again. I am here. In the afternoon we went to the Temple of Lemda. The luggage problem was also resolved, so I was thinking of leaving sooner than planned. How have you been? I had tea time and a short consultation with the Cercopian priest. For some reason, I was concerned about his red thread, which was considerably thicker than before. There was no red thread on the outside, so it was definitely not an illness or injury. I didn't know why the death flag was so thick. What's going on? Your eyes are very red. Have you been unable to sleep lately? The truth is, my son, who ran away from home, keeps appearing in my dreams these days. In response to my tenacious question, he hesitantly confessed his heartache. He was thinking of his son a lot these days. When I first fell here, the first monster I saved was the Cercopian priest. The name of his disease, which no one could cure, was somatization disorder. The various after effects of it. He originally had one son, but 10 years ago, he said he couldn't live in a rural village like this. I won't be a priest. I will become a great person, he said, and he ran away. While waiting for him to come, the priest became angry, and he fell ill. Although he is a wretched child, the Cercopian priest waited for his son enough that he still had a picture of him. It's a frivolous request, but can I ask just one thing? If you travel, you'll visit a lot of villages, right? If you come across a guy who looks like this, will you tell me if it's alive or dead? He took out the pendant he was wearing all the time. It was a picture of a 7-year-old boy with light purple hair smiling broadly. At first glance, he looked like a human, but the half-moon-shaped eyes on his forehead and the stitches on the back of his hands made it clear that he was a monster. Probably a spider monster like his dad. I froze with the scream. The red thread that I thought was simply a pendant string, reflected in the sunlight, stuck to my heart. Suddenly, there was a connection between the picture and me. I was very perplexed by the unexpected situation. The fact that the red thread is attached to the heart means that the life of the target belongs to the owner of the heart. In other words, his life depends on me. If I die, he will die too. I felt déjà vu. I've never felt so horrified since my first meeting with Abel. I asked, suppressing my trembling voice. I wonder, what's your son's name? Herman Hess Widu Cercopia too. It's not even a name I've heard before. It's a name that doesn't even exist in the book. Shit, but why? Why? I was about to come to my senses, but I soon regained my consciousness. It's not like it's going to ruin my life. However, I was a little reluctant to risk someone's life, but I decided to wait and see. Do you have any idea where he is? It's been 10 years since he ran away from home, he said gloomily. Oh yes, I quickly agreed. I shouldn't have listened or gave advice like a salesperson. Belated regret came like a tsunami, but it was already spilled water. It was a stuck red thread. But if I meet the goddess of fate, I'll have to grab her by the collar. No, I need to go. Yeah, I must get up. The Reaper will shoot me to death with his eyes. The 8 pupils of the Cercopian priest shook like an earthquake, and when I turned around, Abel was sitting on a chair behind the altar with his arms crossed. Its gritty appearance is similar to that of a debt collector who came to receive a loan. What did he say to make your face look like that? Nothing. What is that? Abel had a good eye. He glanced at the pendant hanging from my neck and asked, and I inadvertently wanted to answer a picture of his son, then changed my words. Since it is impossible to predict what will happen after the Webcomic and Versepo events, there are times when a good lie is better. Amulet, he wishes me all the best in my life and the future. Of course, it's already twisted and seems irreversible. Sobbed. As I was sobbing internally, I notified Abel and Sleipnir, who appeared from nowhere as soon as I left the temple. We're leaving tomorrow. If I stayed longer, the red thread, life, and the plan for a happy comeback home seemed to get more twisted. The next morning, oh my god, Sleipnir rumbled as his mane fluttered. I found him and gladly jumped out of the saddle. Versepo, I welcomed him with pleasure. It was the last time Abel noticed and I was on the way to his house to stop by, but surprisingly, he had already come out to the mouth of the forest. It was an odd thing. Are you okay? Are you very surprised? After apologizing awkwardly to Sleipnir, Versepo shyly offered a handmade first aid kit. I've been waiting to give you this. Thank you, let me see your hands. Sorry for being late. I resent the day I couldn't come to visit right away because I couldn't overcome that dormant volcano. Feeling very guilty, I grabbed his hand and pulled it, but Versepo smiled brightly like a cosmos and held out his hand. Surprisingly, his hand was intact. I'm sure he must have lost his vitality darkly because of the energy. No matter how resilient you are in the forest, it is unreasonable to be healed in a day if you absorb the energy of death. What? With a bewildered expression on my face, Versepo whispered to me, putting his hands together like a morning glory. Actually, that evening, the Reaper came and gave me back my vitality. Yes, doubting my ears, I saw Abel who didn't budge on Sleipnir. He was holding the death scythe with one hand. He had a very scary expression and an awkward, ant-like voice, but he also apologized and was sorry. I don't think he's a very bad person. When he was gone that evening was to apologize. Again, Abel looked different. My heart was pounding. Are you finally becoming a person? In the original, he was a violent and angry Yandir, but did he finally learn how to be considerate of others? Goodbye, Lion. Take care of yourself. Goodbye to the Reaper too. I waved my hand until I couldn't see Versepo. Good job, Abel. What a kind boy. Did you even apologize to Versephone? Oh my god, that is so nice. What are you doing? Abel was startled when I rubbed the back of his head. Good job. Good job. That's right. Abel was simple, so if I used the carrot and stick tactic, he would be sure to get the hang of it. Our bird also liked it when I praised it. Coochie coochie. Because of this, I praised him fiercely. Anyway, I thought it was fortunate that Abel was changing even a little bit. Until then. Hello, how are you? 10 days have passed since I left Lemda village. It was like gathering information in a village that was heard, providing treatment if necessary, and staying overnight in return. While hanging out with the healing priests, I occasionally asked about a sand and the saintess, but they didn't know anything at all. With such a great ability, rumors would have spread throughout the country in an instant. Like me now, even though my imperfect ability is this much, if it were the ability of Saintess Lucia without even a risk, it would surely make the whole of Valhalla tumultuous. Like in the original. I heard a rumor. A human priest from the Temple of Ramda. You have a much better impression than I thought. The person next to you. I am the god of death. He's a colleague. How many times have I told you not to call yourself the god of death? You're getting kicked out right now. I giggled silently as I rolled up my arms and pretended to be ready to heal. Then Abel wrinkled his eyebrows as he didn't like it, and hurriedly went out of the temple. What's wrong with him these days? He's been like that every time since we came out of Lemda village. He doesn't really get into big troubles, but it makes me emotionally concerned. Even if I wanted to seriously ask what the problem was, we ran during the day, and when I arrived at the visible village, information gathering, healing, dinner with priests, moving, sleep, moving again was repeated, so there was no time to talk properly. The canary priest, whose shiny beak was covered with bright yellow wings, asked anxiously, "Well, if I say, no, it's just that he's in a bad mood these days. Don't mind it." I smiled awkwardly and healed the broken arm of a giant dinosaur-like lizard monster. At the same time, the arm on the same side throbbed sharply and I bit my lip. It is a familiar pain, but it feels especially painful these days. Taking the herbal reliever that Versepo gave me was definitely less painful, but I was trying not to drink as much as I could because if I continued to eat it, I would gain immunity. I left the temple with an anxious mind. Oh my gosh, the sun is particularly stinging, and no one looks at me strangely even if I put my head on the temple wall for a while. For the monsters, there was no such thing as a human. Abel's energy caused my smell to be almost obscured, but as I entered the field of light where Luce was, there were many monsters who looked like humans. With a familiar or even pretty appearance, mammalian monsters, which were rare in Lemda village, appeared in large numbers, and even a few days ago I saw a fairy, dandruff-like drops fell every time it flapped its wings. Nevertheless, it is clear that the reason they are reluctant to talk or say hello is due to their arrogant or sullen expression. They're just like a scoundrel, just looking straight ahead and passing by. Although the appearance is much more glamorous, there are no monsters that approach you as warmly as Lemda village. I never thought I would miss the spirit of the monster. Maybe it's because I'm in a rural village. Feeling somewhat fatigued, I headed towards the forest where Sleipnir was. I arrived early in the morning today at the village that we stopped by, so I started moving around midday. So at night, I couldn't find the next village, so we had to camp abruptly. Haha, don't worry about it. The closer you are to the land of light, the fewer evil monsters it will be. If you're nervous, I'll be on guard. Infinitely positive. Sleipnir made a place to make a bonfire with his hoof and made a light fire. In fact, Abel and Sleipnir are monsters who do not need warmth, so it was purely for me. Sleipnir was excited and disappeared into the woods to get more firewood. Suddenly, Abel and I were left alone. It was the first time in 10 days. Abel, who would normally bring up one of the day's events, was leaning against a tree for some reason and he quietly closed his eyes. The side of the bonfire is burning, so I've been staring at it for a while. I did my own thing. Lion, as I stared intently at the heart box, Abel said as he kicked a branch into the fading bonfire. He doesn't feel the cold himself, so Abel keeps the bonfire even though he doesn't have to make it. I've been thinking about it. Being immortal. I said I had to tear the thread of fate or something from my heart. Yep, I replied sarcastically, put the box in, and pulled out the book I borrowed from the temple. But I wondered if I could return it. It was a book about the legend of Solar and a book about curses. Then I don't think there's any need to fix it. What is he saying? I doubted my ears. What are you talking about? I need to fix it. It doesn't have to be you, but I'll find someone to fix it. Don't worry, I'll find it. Abel cut off his words and I went through books on curses, but Abel was too quiet. No, it was acoustically quiet. How are you sure of that? I couldn't stand the shivering of even the trees, so when I looked up, the red eyes were in front of my nose. From experience, I knew that look very well, so I quickly squeezed out an excuse. Intuition. Yes, it's intuition. The intuition of someone who sees the thread of fate or something like that. Anyway, trust me. You're always like that. Damn it. What the hell are you looking at? I flinched and took my eyes off the red thread I was looking at without realizing it. Abel hates me seeing the heart. Even though he couldn't see the red thread, he was incredibly sensitive, as if he knew I was looking at it. Sorry, I'm trying to fix it. It's not just the gaze. Abel suddenly exploded. The trees screamed in fear at the death of the raging reaper. It felt like I was hit by a typhoon. You never looked at me properly. Did you think I didn't know? Abel, who pushed me, raised his head with high pressure. Abel's expression was cool with the appalling backlight. You seem to have been looking at someone other than me for a long time. Tell me, who are you thinking of when you look at me? Who the hell are you looking at? His energy was raging and the tree behind me shriveled to death. Even though I knew it wouldn't do any harm to me, I was terrified of it, so I couldn't fathom the momentum. I swallowed dry saliva and barely spoke. Abel, wait a minute. Calm down. Really, I dealt with even the same monsters, and I stayed quiet in that town for fear that you might get in trouble. How long do I have to endure it? Did you endure it? For a moment, the back of my head throbbed in pain. Either way, Abel grabbed my cheek and clenched his teeth. You're the only one who pushes my patience this far. Human. He brought up a word he had never said before. I still couldn't get out of the shock. I thought that Abel's personality was being changed, and that he was changing to be mellow in contrast to the original work. He just said he was holding on. My head shook at the shock. Abel, who was staring at my expression on him, raised the corners of his lips. The red corners of his lips are rising over the pale cheeks, and the way it rises is eerily beautiful. Abel stroked my chin with his hand and pressed his mouth to my ear. My ears felt soggy and wet, and the power of the Reaper made me tighten my body. There was no way to escape. Don't test me. You're not looking at me, so what else can I endure? Don't you feel the same way I do? Is it time to admit it now? My eyes widened and I was speechless, and Abel grabbed my chin with her gentle hand. Whether it was fear or embarrassment, my heart raced like crazy. Abel twisted his chin in front of my nose and looked arrogantly at me. Abel, who I recently photographed his beauty, was breathtakingly sculptural. as much as I dare not touch. Yes, he wasn't mine in the first place, I thought, panting my breath, tired of fear or beauty. Only the female lead can break Abel's curse. I can't fix Abel with my abilities, which are her fake. Whether he liked it or not, Abel had to meet the female lead, and he had to win her favor. But what if I accept Abel now? It reminded me of the original plot, which continued straight after being twisted by my intervention. Indeed, if Abel goes on like this, he will die at the hands of the male lead, a sand, just like the original story. I was afraid of that. I was afraid that it would become irreversible forever. It seemed that all the efforts I had made in the past would be in vain. You seem to be mistaken because I kissed you that day. So I took another step back. I couldn't stand the aftermath. That was the purpose of treatment. ... Then you still think so. Do what you want. It was when Abel, whose eyes suddenly changed, grabbed my chin roughly and was about to hit my lips. Hey, that's enough of the love fight, right? What the hell? Abel, who paused, rarely brought swear words to his mouth. When I turned around, I saw a monster in a bizarre shape in the dark forest. And there was a man in a fancy-looking suit standing there. How dare you intervene? Do you want to die? Abel wrinkled his brow in disturbed anger, and I wrinkled my brow in shock. They were none other than a group of villains, Asura and Caesar of Apocalypse. Caesar, who looked like a human in a well-dressed suit, said, "I'm sorry, but you, the demigod, we have something to do with that person. Abel, let's go." I hurriedly grabbed Abel and stretched out my hand, but it was cancelled because Caesar, who appeared in front of me as if teleporting in a flash, grabbed my arm and pulled me away. Oh no. Caesar took my arm and spoke slowly. "Where are you going? How dare this bastard?" The black energy that spread like grains of sand attacked me, but Caesar quickly retreated and tossed a bunch of cards from his hands. The bundles of cards that block the energy are blazing black and disappear into the air. Even in the midst of it, he has the composure to throw a dice made of pure gold. A black suit, a yellow shirt, and a light blue tie. Golden, dark blonde hair rolled back with mousse. The man who has the feeling of a young dandy man is Caesar, a descendant of Sisyphus, a man who is protected by the god of probability and the god of gambling. A scammer pretending to be a gambler. Whether the shock therapy worked or not, a few years of memories came to mind. Dangerous. I don't know anything else, but getting entangled with Caesar is dangerous. Demigod. Do you know Asura's abilities? I've heard of you being stupid, but think carefully. Abel wrinkled his brow and looked at my arm caught by Asura. Caesar sighed and said, "If I wiggle it, I can send her flying beyond your knowledge. Asura is a monster who controls space. Human, I need you." Huh? For a moment, doubting my hearing, I pointed to my chest and asked, confused, "Are there any other humans here besides you? I heard it has something to do with whether you're the goddess of fate. The thing we're trying to fix is related to it. To be more precise, he's trying to take care of Solar, who pulls out the thread of fate." As I pondered, I was startled by the sound of the rattling dice coming from close to me. "So, you should go with us." "Abel, hold on. Please be patient." In a rush to pull his scythe out of anger, I hugged him with my whole body, and he flinched and calmly lowered the scythe. I looked up at him, hugged him confusedly, and Abel looked down at me. How can he look good from below? Oh, this is an unexpected situation. Caesar, who was taking turns looking at our faces, touched his chin with a strange expression. Then he beckons me with a sly smile like a fox planning to pick grapes. If I took that person alone, would it be killing two birds with one stone? Damn it. The direction seemed a little wrong, but Caesar was quick to notice. He stared at me, his eyes gleaming as if inlaid with gold, and then rolled the dice he was holding. The dice fell into the air with a golden afterimage. 1 and 1. This time, he rolled while looking at Abel. Again 1 and 1. Who? Caesar admired it a second time. I tried to take only 1 because I was bothered, but no matter how much I tried, it was 2. Strangely, demigod must come with me as well. You cheeky bastard. Abel growled as if he was about to rush, but I grabbed him tightly. It's not that I don't believe in Abel's abilities. Abel is strong. However, Caesar is the luckiest man in the world. Besides, he has too many cunning tricks. I know that it is a difficult style to deal with simple force, so I calmly tried to negotiate. What's the benefit if I go there? I'm sure you can get the information you want. I heard you've been digging for Asan's information. Asan? Abel intervened sharply. I feel sorry for the delay. Abel is the one who was exiled from Luce, and Asan is the guardian of Luce. He couldn't help but come along, so I kept it a secret from him and went around collecting information. Why did you go around collecting Asan's information? Abel, we'll talk about that later. Hey, Abel snapped, but in a rush, I clasped his hand and grabbed it instead. Abel was quiet. Well, anyway, I don't want to go to the villain group to get information. It's dangerous. Then the negotiations are broken. Then you have to die. I know you can't kill me. If you wanted to kill me, you would have killed me earlier. Caesar is a master of push and pull. I know for sure that he was trying to create a sense of fear. Female lead also has a history of obtaining information from several threats like this. You can't kill me. Even if you try to kill me, I have Abel, who is among the top 3 combat powers. Caesar's eyes narrowed. You're a pretty smart human. Demigod. Better than you. Are you carrying her as a head replacement? Or the other way? This bastard, let's see. Abel, who staggered over Caesar's smirk while tapping his temple, fired a slash. It was because I was negligent in the blink of an eye and was caught off guard. Abel. No. Abel attacked Caesar without hesitation, and Caesar with an unpleasant smile said, "It's as planned." Instead of avoiding the slash, Caesar flipped the coin. Clink. The coin rolled in the air and stopped at the side where the knife was drawn. Bang. The slash was offset by the coin. I received your duel request. Come on, say your greetings. Caesar bowed his head politely, placing a hand on his chest, summoned an hourglass, with golden sand fluttering in his palm. Knowing what that was, I groaned as I clenched my forehead. Come on, let's start the bet. Listen closely, you demigod. If you collect my soul until this hourglass runs out, it's your win. Otherwise, it's my win. Caesar is the luckiest man in the world. A descendant of Sisyphus, the first man who deceived the gods, and a man who received the protection of Babylon, the god of probability and gambling. Most of what he wanted to do will be successful, as did gambling and betting. That's what I wished for. I'll cut you into pieces and throw it into the bottom of hell. Abel, who had been boiling for a while, immediately swung the death scythe with his red eyes. His energy was raging, and the dense forest turned to ashes in an instant. But Caesar was fine. Eventually, the hourglass flashed golden, signaling the end. At the first defeat since becoming a reaper, Abel growled with bright red eyes. You bastard, how dare you? But it's already too late, isn't it? A bet once accepted by a god cannot be defeated. This hourglass was made from the sand at the bottom of the Styx River. Styx River. It is a river, the mecca of promises that even the gods cannot ignore. If you put the name of Styx, even the gods can't stop you. A sand, who was skeptical at the beginning, at first believed that the female lead was not an enemy when she said, "I swear by the river Styx." To say the least, it was like a famous landmark for appointments. However, Abel had an unusual accident. Then I will wipe out the entire Styx River. Ha ha ha, you'll die before that. And that person you don't know will die too. Abel, who seemed to be running at any moment, flinched. I felt the red thread on my wrist thickening. The more Abel reacts negatively, the thicker the red thread that was entangled in Caesar's hourglass. So, what's the answer? Caesar, who was staring at my expression, smiled round and round as our eyes met. He is a man who even deceived the Grim Reaper who came to pick me up. It meant there was no way out, and it wasn't nonsense. Knowing this, I was going to try to run away. Okay, I'll accept it for now. But Caesar, I don't think you're the real commander, so we can negotiate in detail later, right? When referring to the lesser-known commander of Apocalypse, I observed a slightly interesting change in Caesar's expression. Okay, I drew attention. I was relieved to see the face changed mysteriously. He is quick at calculating. You probably know how useful I am and how much information I need. Caesar turned around, tossing the dice, and Asura, who was waiting quietly, fumbled through the air with the 6 arms, tearing the space apart. The background was torn like a tent, and a space as black as space appeared. I was expecting it, but when I saw it in reality, I was stunned by the absurdity. Asura gestured with one arm except for the 5 arms that grabbed the space. Hurry up, let's go for now, I said awkwardly. Abel's expression hardened and there were no words. If I just said no, I thought I'd turn around and run with the sand of Styx right away. But unfortunately, it was scary for me, who knew the power of the Styx River well. If I do, I'm afraid Abel will have problems. I'm worried about you. The river Styx isn't something that even a god can ignore. Abel, who seemed to think for a moment, moved his steps slowly. Just before he entered the black space, he grabbed my hand. I grabbed it so tightly that his cold hand that touched mine felt lukewarm. In an instant, the sky and the earth changed and become tangled. As we took one step, the space grew darker and we came out to a place where the black star twinkled. It's the Dark Age, the Dark Land. It was the place where Apocalypse stayed. Can't I just kill that bastard? Abel, who was walking through the space-like place, whispered dissatisfied. That bastard is a con artist. That's the problem. You can't kill it. The male lead, Asan himself, was unable to kill Caesar. Even in the game, strength, intelligence, agility, everything is unnecessary, and luck is the best. a land of darkness that appears when you go down through the Death Canyon made of black sand and rocks and cross the Black River. It was a huge field that existed under the reign of the Dark Lord, where only the strongest among the corrupted or dark monsters were gathered. Dark Age. Passing the entrance written in blood-red letters that seemed to flow down on a huge rock, I saw a bustling city. All of the monsters in here are spirits or demons. I arrived at the Black Castle where the Dark Lord was, receiving all kinds of glances. That I would be delicious. There were 2 pale moons hanging from the top of the castle. Due to the power of the Dark Lord, it was like a field where there was always darkness 365 days a year. Deep inside the castle, when the huge door creaked open, it was dark all over the place. A dry, emotionless voice resounds throughout the dark hall. Yes, you're here. The door closed behind my back with a squeak and a creepy sound. Suddenly, there were only 3 of us left in this dark room. Let's be calm, don't be scared. I am the Dark Lord, the leader of the apocalypse. Dark Lord, female leads male interest number 5. As a habit, information came to mind. It seems that it is worthwhile to write it down on parchment and recall the memories. Are you Saintess Lucia? Huh? There was a dazed sound of embarrassment in my answer. In an unexpected development, I forgot all the expected questions and answers I had been thinking about as I came. Either way, the Dark Lord began to speak sharply, narcissistically, with his dark red eyes gleaming under the hood. Lies don't work. We've been gathering information about your powers and abilities for a long time. They match exactly the powers in the prophecy. Weren't you gathering Asan's information to unlock his seal? Hearing the strangely raised voice, this Dark Lord must have already been convinced that I was the female lead. Thanks to that, the blame was entirely on me. My abilities are fake, because she was the one who gathered the Asan information. Because the original story begins only when the male lead breaks the seal. But I could never say that, so I just ripped my hair out. Also, when the name Asan appeared again, Abel's condescending eyes turned to me. The Dark Lord saw me too. Suddenly receiving 2 pairs of red eyes, I struggle to keep my head above the water. It's not really. She hasn't. No yet. Anyway, look, we look different. I gibberishly pointed at my face. Even though I had to undergo appearance correction due to the effect of dimensional shift, I do not have a striking appearance like Saintess Lucia. Pure white hair, blue eyes that could embrace everything. Yes, you certainly look different, because Lucia's body is sleeping and loose. However, the possibility that you possessed only her soul, leaving her body, cannot be ruled out. Unlike the bubbly Abel, the Dark Lord was a ruler of darkness with tremendous power that would plunge me into a brimstone fire if he wanted to. There is no need for the number 1 villain to act. Styx, I swear by the river Styx I'm not. He was silent for a moment as I demonstrated the trick I had picked up as a last bastion with his innocent eyes asking him to trust me. Okay, for now, I don't care if you're a saint or not. I just need your cooperation. Anyway, until we carry out our plan, you'll have to stay under my watch so that Asan's seal is not broken. Who wants that? He grabbed my wrist and hid me behind. My hair fluttered and I choked in the invisible fight, and I buried my head in Abel's back. Reaper, I've heard rumors that you two were kicked out of the temple. Apparently, your strength has weakened a lot. Don't you need a lot of souls to gather power again? In that sense, Apocalypse is the best area for that activity. I'll take care of that. Shut up and get rid of this Caesar or whatever cheating bastard right now. I can't do that. Look at that useless sense of confidence. Such a fool. I took a deep breath and shook my head. If I refuse, Abel will come to fight the Dark Lord and Caesar. No matter how strong he is, he cannot defeat the Dark Lord, the strongest villain in the game. Even if Abel wins, he will be caught one way or another. Even though we had wandered the long way, Apocalypse still came to him. In the end, he was deceived by Caesar, even though the details were not revealed in the original story. But he was deceived by Caesar even then and was half forced to be recruited. And now we're here. It's such a horrifyingly strange pattern. In the Temple of Immortality, I thoroughly realized that if I was bound by the original unchanging law, I would still return to my original place even if I refused, so I decided to quickly accept reality. Embarrassed and about to fall a little, the Dark Lord gave out a windy laugh. It's a combination of a reaper who seeks immortality and a human who lives a short life. Interesting. The Dark Lord, who spoke dryly in an uninteresting voice, clenched his chin. The Dark Lord's red thread embedded in his chest melted into the darkness of the floor, and there was no end in sight, unlike the other's red threads that rose upward towards solar. There were 2 moons hanging brightly outside the window, but not a single light came into the room. A verse came to mind at that gloomy look. His childhood name was Hardin. As a vampire, he was cursed to burn when exposed to light due to Solar's wrath as soon as he was born. Because of this, he curses Solar and creates a group of villains, Apocalypse, to make the world dark. As I came out of the suffocating castle, a figure I had forgotten was waiting on the bridge. The figure of a monster standing proudly with a flaming mane fluttering. I rushed to him with regret and pleasure and hugged him tightly. Sleipnir, I'm glad you're safe. Well, you know how surprised I was that you were gone. It was Sleipnir who seemed to have come for a long time. Asura probably wouldn't have met him. How did he get here so quickly? As I wondered, I remembered several times that he said he was from the Dark Age. It must have felt like coming home for him. I opened the note and read it. I will arrange a house near the Black Castle. It was written that they would provide separate residences for Abel and mine if we wished. Abel, they can also provide a separate house for you. What should I do? I'll just live with him. Yes, then I will tell them that. I looked faintly at the nightmare who received the message and nodded its head and flew away. That will be all for now. I hope you find this story interesting. Leave a like, subscribe, and enable notifications so you won't miss the next part of this story. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.